so that we can get started. But I wanted to start before I did that and just welcome everyone and say thank you so much for taking some time today to come and view this presentation. I think you're going to find it really beneficial and that you're going to walk away with a lot of ideas that you can use tomorrow to help use a child's name to teach across the curriculum. Oh. I wanted to tell you a little bit more about myself. I know that Dr. Shipley shared a little bit, but my name's Zaur, and I've spent the last 18 years in education. I've been an elementary teacher. I started in 5th grade and then went to 6th grade and then found my home in 3rd grade before moving on to my new home, which was in the world of literacy and being a reading interventionist. And I was the teacher who loved to work with all the struggling young readers. I would always tell everyone, you know, give me the low kids, let me take the low kids. They were my favorite. I just loved working with them. And so as my desire to work with children who were struggling grew, I went back to school and pursued my master's in language and literacy. And when I finished that degree, I was fortunate enough to come here to Ashford and to be able to share some of my passion and knowledge with future educators as well. And my love for teaching young children has remained strong, even though I'm no longer in the classroom. And part of that is that I get the opportunity to spend time in classrooms and, you know, continue to practice my skills and see what's happening in the world of education out in the field. And so I'm thrilled to have the chance today to share one of my favorite strategies with you, which is using children's names to teach important concepts. So thank you again for joining me. But before we get started, I wanted to take a minute and see how many of you have ever used a child's name to help teach across the curriculum. So share in the chat either, yes, I use kids' names to teach across the curriculum. No, I don't. I've tried it like this. Here's maybe something I've done. But just take a minute and in the chat, share with us anything that maybe you've done in the past with using a child's name to teach across the curriculum, or whether you've had no experience using children's names to teach across the curriculum. Okay, so Allison said, yes, she would do it during circle time every day in pre-K. Tisha said on her word wall. Don't be shy. It's okay, even if you have no experience, that helps me know kind of where everyone's at. For spelling tests, anyone else? Let's see, Michelle said she would use puzzles with names in kindergarten for kids who could not spell their own names or put them together. Great, so I see a common theme running through the ideas in the chat. I see a lot of people who use children's names to teach literacy concepts, and that was where my love of teaching with names came from in the beginning as well. But there's actually a lot of other ways across the curriculum outside of literacy that you can teach with a child's name too. And so today we're going to get the chance to talk about ways that we can use children's names not only for literacy, but across the curriculum as a whole. But before we talk about some specific strategies, we have to know why. Why should we use a child's name to teach important concepts, such as reading, math, science, and fine motor skills? Well, for many young children, and my own 4 young children included, there's little that's more important to them than their own name. Their name gives them a sense of identity, it gives them something that they can connect with, and we all know how important connections are when learning new information. For many young children, one of the first things they recognize is their name. And I see this with my own youngest, who's 4. She walks into any room, and right now, still any word that starts with an E for Emily is her name. But she gets so excited and she lights up when she sees something that either is her whole name or that starts with the same letter as her name. It's meaningful to them because when they hear their name called, they know that someone is looking for them, someone needs them, or someone wants them. And that sense of ownership and pride is something that means so much to them that it makes them feel important and connected, which connects to what they do in school. So when a child walks into their classroom and they see their name on the wall or they're peppy, they get excited. When they're excited, they're more eager and motivated to learn. There aren't many things that capture a child's interest and attention much more quickly than when they hear or see their name in print. So all of these reasons, along with the natural curiosity that children have about their own name and the names of other children, makes using children's names to teach across the curriculum a no-brainer. Along with this, names are everywhere. We use names for stores, countries, cereal, children's toys, everything. When we introduce a person or a place, we typically do so by its name. The focus on names and learning who everyone is an important part of any early learning environment. So we also too want to make sure that we look at the research and what the research has to say about why names are so important to children. Well, according to the Center of Disease Control, by 6 months, children can recognize their name when they're being called. 6 months. So as an infant already has a connection to their name. Between the ages of 2 and 3, most children can recognize the first letter of their name. And between 3 and 5, most children can recognize and spell their entire name. So not only are children excited about their names, but teaching with their names is developmentally appropriate because as you can see, starting as early as 6 months, children begin to identify with their name. So if we're speaking about developmentally appropriate practice, we want to take a look at the different ways and the different stages that children go through when they're learning their names so that we can make sure the activities that we plan or the lessons we plan in our classrooms align with what's appropriate. And children go through 3 main stages as they're learning their names. They go through the recognition stage, the spelling stage, and the writing stage. And the first phase that children go through when they begin to learn their name is the recognition phase. This occurs not only as infants when they hear their name, like we just talked about, how most children can recognize their name by 6 months, but it also as they begin to recognize the initial letter in their name. Usually when children are in the recognition phase, they think that any word that starts with the same letter is their name. So this is just like the example I shared a minute ago about my daughter, Emily, who's 4. Any word that starts with an E is Emily. She's in the recognition phase still when it comes to learning her name. Once children have name recognition, then they move into the spelling phase. And oftentimes children begin by spelling their name orally. Many of you might have seen this in the work you've done with children, where you can ask a child to spell their name and they can spell it out loud, but they might struggle to spell it if you gave them letter tiles or if you asked them to write it on a piece of paper. During this phase, children will begin to recognize each individual letter in their name rather than seeing their name as a whole piece. So for example, if I go back to my daughter Emily, instead of just recognizing the E, when she's in the spelling phase, she might see an L on something or a Y on something and say, hey, that's my name, because she's starting to put together that there are multiple letters and all of these letters together make up her name. And then the final stage of a child learning their name is the writing phase. So when children have mastered how to recognize and spell their name, then they're ready to work on writing their name. Many times children are simultaneously in the spelling and writing stage together. During this phase, it's important to find as many opportunities as you can to practice writing their name. And the majority of the activities that we talk about today are going to help children who fall into that spelling and writing phase, not quite as much as children who are in the recognition phase. All right, so on to the fun part. The activities that you can take and use with your students or share with the families that you work with to teach across the curriculum using names. Today, we'll share activities with you that you can use that have to do with math, science, reading, writing, art, and that even apply into the developmental domains of language, fine motor skills, and cognitive. You guys ready? This is my favorite part, to talk about all the fun things that you can do. So, to start, one of the simplest and yet most important concepts you can teach your students with their name is letter recognition. You can work on identification of upper and lowercase letters. There's several different ways that you can work on letter recognition with your child's name. First, you can simply give them a sentence strip, and on the sentence strip, write their name on it. As they point to each letter on their name, you can have them tell you the letter and identify whether it's an uppercase letter or a lowercase letter and what the name of that actual letter is. And since you already have their name on the sentence strip, then you can turn it into a fine motor skill activity. You can give them a pair of scissors, have them cut each of the letters apart in their name, and then have them practice matching up the letters or moving and manipulating the letters around so that they have to put their letters back in order of their name. Or if you want to work specifically on letter recognition skills, you can give them an alphabet chart and have them take the letters that they've cut apart from the sentence strip and match those letters to the letter on the alphabet chart. You can even have them, if they're ready for it, instead of you writing the name on their sentence strip to start, you can have the kids write their name, and it's a great way to practice letter formation and again, get into some of that fine motor skill practice. Another thing that you can do to work on letter recognition is you can take those same letters that you've cut up from the sentence strip and you can put them into a brown paper bag and shake it up. And then you have the kids pull one letter out of the bag at a time. As they pull each letter out, they tell you what that letter is. And then if depending on what stage they're at or what they're ready for, you can have them go ahead and arrange those letters in the correct order of their name. So just a few ways that you can use a child's name to work on letter recognition skills. Along with letter recognition skills, we can also teach a variety of phonics and phonemic awareness concepts, such as vowel and consonant sounds, rhyming, first sound fluency, and syllabication. All of these skills can be taught with a child's name. And I'm going to apologize in advance before I sing here for a minute, because that was never my strength or specialty. But listen to this for a minute. Jenny, Jenny, Bo Benny, Banana Fana, Fo Fenny, Me, My, Mo Many, Jenny. I'm guessing that a lot of you are probably now singing that song in your own head with your own name, or maybe since you're on mute, you guys might be singing it out loud. But names are a great way to work on rhyming skills. You can do a fun song like the one that I just did, or you can simply choose the name of a student in your class and see how many words that you can come up with that rhyme with it. So lots of options for working on rhyming. And while some names are easier than others to find a rhyming match with, you can always use fake names or simply play the name game song I shared. But either way, kids love it because they're using their names and they don't even realize that they're working on an important phonemic awareness skill of rhyming. And then closely related to this is, excuse me, are working on vowel and consonant sounds. You can use many of the same activities that I just shared with you for letter recognition for helping children to differentiate and master between vowel and consonant sounds. So instead of asking the child to say the name of the letter when you have put all the letters in a bag, you can switch to having them say the name of the sound. Or if you're looking for something a little more complex, because maybe you have a child who is more advanced and ready for more, you can have them find a partner and find the sounds in their name that match with the sounds in their own name. So match the sounds between their name and their partner's name. And children always get so excited when they realize that their friends have the same sounds as them. They think it's so fun that they and their friend have something in common with their names, because again, names are so important to young children. Another skill that you can work on and teach is first sound fluency. And for most of you who are in here and you work with young learners, this is a skill that is focused on in early readers to help predict future literacy success. So it's nice to find a way to practice first sound fluency that's connected to something important, such as a child's name. So one of the best ways that I do this is to play four corners in the classroom. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with four corners. And so what I would do is I would turn each of the four corners in my classroom into a different first sound. So if your name begins with the P sound, then you would go to a certain corner. If your name begins with the S sound, you would go to a different corner. And you could do it all with the names of the children in your class. And you could adjust this and modify it from medial sounds or ending sounds. But there's all kinds of ways that you can use kids' names with first sound fluency and turn it into something fun and engaging. And we know that if kids get up and move and wiggle around while they're learning, it helps to make their brain flow better. It moves more oxygen to their brain. It helps to get them up and going. So it's a great way to incorporate a little bit of physical activity with an academic concept. And it's a really great assessment tool as well, because you'll see those kiddos who go to every single corner and you know that they aren't understanding the concept of first sound fluency or what something starts with. So it's a really great visual way for you to do some informal assessing as well. And then the last concept related to the phonemic awareness and phonics is syllabication. And you can use the four corners approach again for this. You can assign each corner a certain number of syllables, and depending on how many syllables are in a child's name, they would go to the appropriate corner. Or you can do the classic clapping it out and letting them hear how many syllables are in their name. And you can have, if you have some kids that are extra wiggly, or maybe you want to mix it up, instead of having them clap it out, you can have them jump up and down and jump for each syllable. And that helps some of those kids that maybe need to get out a few of their extra wiggles as they're working on learning these concepts. Okay, so moving away from literacy, we're going to jump to math. Just like with literacy, there are a lot of different concepts that you can teach with a child's name that are connected to math. They're wonderful for teaching math concepts because you can start with something simple, like having children count the letters in their name or the letters in the names of their classmates. You could do this by giving them letter tiles and practicing one-to-one correspondence as they move each tile as they count. If they have the same letter in their name more than one time, you could have them count that letter, like work on multiples. Find how many A's you have in your name. Find how many E's you have. Find how many S's. So in that case, you're actually combining a math concept with a literacy concept. And it's a really great way. These are all great because they're connected back to the learning standards when you're talking about number sense. And along with counting and comparing, you could also have compare, oh, my name has 5 letters, your name has 8 letters, my name has less letters than yours. You can work on those ideas of greater than and less than too. And related to the greater than and less than, you can pull in the concept of graphing. So if you start by having the kids count how many letters are in their name, then you can turn those into graphing concepts. You could do a class graph that's based on the number of students who have a certain number of letters in their name, or you could have a child do an individual graph. They could graph the number of vowels compared to the number of consonants. They could do a graph with the number of syllables that they have in their name to go back to some of the literacy concepts and teach across the curriculum and integrate the math and literacy ideas together, all while using a child's name. And then finally, you can also work on sorting skills. So you can have children sort by the number of letters in their name. You can have them sort by the sounds that the letters make. There's a ton of different options, but the kids will stay engaged because they're using their name, and that's something that's important to them and that they're connected with. So I've shared several different strategies, and I wanted to take a minute and pause and give you the chance to reflect before I share a few more. So which of the strategies that I've shared are you eager to give a try? Or which ones, maybe if you're in the role like I am right now as a professor, which ones might you encourage your students to go and try with the children that they're working with? Sorting names. Anyone else? The fine motor development. Yeah, Natasha, and it's great because you can really differentiate it based on where the kids you're working with are at. You might have some, like I said, that you need to write the name for them on the sentence strip and they're just gonna practice cutting it. You could make it where they trace, but you could instead write their name with a highlighter and then have them trace over it so they could practice their tracing and then cut it apart. You might have some that are ready to write, but it's really nice because you can still teach the same concepts, but you can differentiate it based on the needs of the kids you're working with. You're gonna sing rhyming songs. Carol, I hope your voice is better than mine when you do it with your kids, but it's fun even if you can't sing like me. I always would tell my students the only place I sing is in my classroom, and they all thought that I was amazing. Allie said she would recommend to try some of the gross motor skills, lots of wiggly kids. Yeah. Awesome. Oh, Julie, I'm glad that you're already using a lot of these. That's great. Natasha, definitely. They could trace their letters to practice that hand-eye coordination. They could use it with their finger. Yep, meeting them where they're at is what it's all about, right? Okay, well, thanks for sharing with me some of the things that stood out. And I have a few more strategies that I want to share with you. So the next area I want to focus on is fine motor skills. And there's a couple of different things you can work on here. You can work on tracing or making letters. And one thing that I like to do to give my students the chance to practice was to give them Play-Doh. And they would take their Play-Doh and they could work on their motor skills by rolling that Play-Doh out into skinny snakes, and then they would have to take it and manipulate it into the shape of their letter. And if you have a kiddo that struggles, you could do something like what you see on the right-hand side of your screen. You could give them a template, and then they could take their Play-Doh snakes that they had made, and they could use the template to form their Play-Doh into the letter, and they would have a guide. And then as they get more successful, you could pull back, right? If you think about scaffolding, so you're giving them the tools they need to be successful, and then you're pulling back as they're ready to do it on their own. So there's all kinds of ways that you can modify and accommodate to help your students be successful. And you can also, with the tracing, if you don't want to have them do it with the Play-Doh, you can give them the tracing sheet and they can work on their pencil grasp by tracing with their pencil as well. So you could have them, if you gave them a sheet of the whole alphabet, you could have them find and only trace the letters in their name, or you could choose to only give them a sheet that only had their letters in their name. Again, it depends where they're at. And Julie, I agree that the Play-Doh is great for children who have sensory needs. They love to be able to feel and touch and manipulate. And who doesn't love Play-Doh, right? All right, so along with fine motor skills, you can actually bring names into science and nature. And kids love to be outdoors. They love to go on treasure hunts or scavenger hunts. And I've seen this with my own kids or kids that I've worked with. You put them outside and they're outside playing and exploring and having free play time at recess, and they will find all kinds of treasures to bring you and share with you. So why not capitalize on their excitement of going out and exploring by bringing it into their name and into the curriculum? Children can find twigs, rocks, and flowers, and so you can take those things and turn it into a name-based scavenger hunt. So you could have them search for things that begin with the same letter as their name. Not only would this make them excited, but it connects back to some of those literacy skills like first sound fluency that we talked about a little while ago. They can find twigs, stems, pebbles, anything. Along with looking for things that start with their name, you can just kind of send them on a mystery hunt and ask them to go and collect things. And then once they come back, they can take all the little twigs or flowers or pebbles or sand or candy wrappers or whatever it is that they happen to find on the playground, and they can use those items to write their name. So it kind of becomes an art-based project too, where they've used things from nature, and then you can have a class group conversation about what are the things they found and how they're connected to nature. And you know, you could, if you were working on a specific unit, maybe plants, you could talk about if they found a flower, you could talk about the parts of the flower. So there's lots of ways to tie it into the science curriculum, but it's coming back to their name as well. And I think this is a really fun one because it seems like more and more kids don't have the opportunities to spend outside just looking and playing and searching. And so it gives them the chance to do that, but then bring it back to a learning moment in the classroom. And then, as you probably know, most research suggests that 90% of a child's brain development occurs by the age of 5. So if we know this, it's crucial to find ways to help foster cognitive development. And one important cognitive skill is memory. So you can play name memory with your students. You can create memory cards and have your students play and practice while they learn the names of their classmates or their own name. You could do a memory with just the letters in their name. So if I used my daughter Emily, I would make 2 E cards, 2 M cards, 2 I cards, 2 L cards, and 2 Y cards, flip them over upside down, and she could play memory and match up the letters in her own name. Or if you were doing it as a get to know you, you could have where you put each child in the class's name on 2 cards and you played memory as a whole class to get to learn each other's names. It uses their name, but it's really reinforcing that cognitive skill of memory development. And then you could also, and I think Michelle mentioned it when we first talked about using puzzles. You can take a child's name, you could take a square piece of cardboard, or if you had some cardboard that was in shapes like the elephant that you see on the screen, you could write the child's name and then draw the puzzle lines, cut it apart among those puzzle lines, and then have the kids put it back together. If you don't have cardboard, you could do it with construction paper or cardstock, or even go back to the sentence strips that we talked about at the beginning. But they're getting to practice with their name, which is important to them, and focus on their cognitive skills as well. And finally, it wouldn't be early childhood if we didn't talk a little bit about art, right? And letting our kids be creative. So art should play an important role in the work you do with young children. And one thing that you can do with the child's name to incorporate art is symmetry art. And many of you might be familiar with how to do this, but all you do is you take a piece of paper, fold it in half down the middle, and then you write the child's name in paint on the top line. And then you refold it back in half down the middle. And when you open it up, you'll have a symmetrical piece of art with the child's name like you see on the screen, where it has their name on the top and then the mirror image on the bottom. And then the kids can work on their fine motor skills or their art skills as they decorate their name. But again, it will be important and meaningful to them because it's connected back to their own name. And those are all the strategies that I have for you guys today. I'm going to stick around for a little bit in case you have any questions, but I hope that you took away 1 or 2 or 3 things that you can either use with the kids that you're working with tomorrow, or if you're at the college level, a professor like myself, that you can share with your students, maybe when you're giving feedback on assignments or lessons that they've come up with. And again, thank you so much for taking some time to visit with me and hear the strategies and ideas that I shared for teaching across the curriculum using a child's name.
Wow, Jen, thank you so much. That was amazing ideas. I hope that everyone is leaving without at least one thing. I know I was writing down ideas. I have a website, so I might want to use some of those. Does anybody have any questions? She is happy to answer anybody's questions, ideas.
Let's see. Yeah, so Julie said she used a symbol that starts and sounds with each child's name in the classroom. I think that's great. And I think it's really neat, especially, Julie, if it's a different symbol for each child, because it gives them one more thing that's meaningful to them. So not only do they know that their name is special, but when they come in, maybe, you know, if their name is Sarah and they see a star, they're like, oh, that star is for me. When I see things with a star, I know that, you know, my teacher's thinking of me. So I think that's awesome.
Definitely. If anybody has any ideas that they would want to share with us too, that'd be super.
Oh, you're so welcome, Natasha. I hope you found it helpful. It was a lot of fun to put all the ideas together. So all the different things that I've done, and to put them all in one place was nice. Oh, thank you, Carol. I'm glad you got some things you could take away and use. That was my hope, that everyone would walk away with a couple of things they could do.
There were a lot of great things throughout the entire chat that you did awesome too.
Thank you. I know I was trying to watch, but you know how it's tricky sometimes to pay attention to that as you're going through.
That's completely fine. It was great. Great ideas. Everybody, this is recorded, so you are going to be able to go back and watch it. I added the certificate of participation in the chat box, so please make sure that you download that. They are individual for each one. They're 1-hour sessions. So if there are no other questions, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate you so much. Great job. Our next session will start at 1 o'clock. So we will take a short break and we will be back in just a little bit. Thank you so much. See you in just soon.
Thanks, everyone.